My dad looked at me with icy eyes. I only have one heir, and it's not you. My mother's voice echoed from the patio. Years of work and sacrifice shattered in seconds. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone and sent one message. Now let's see who The platform smelled like rust and old gum. That stale train station smell that seeps into your clothes and makes you wonder why you ever came back. I stepped off the last car, bag slung over one shoulder, and felt the thick, wet air of early fall wrap around me. The town hadn't changed. Still peeling, still gray, still clinging to its best years like a drunk uncle in a faded Letterman jacket. My name is Elias. I'm 41 years old. I've been living in Papua New Guinea for the last 9 years, flying tourists, medical supplies, and sometimes livestock across islands most Americans can't pronounce. But this return was supposed to be different. My contract was up, my back ached more than it used to, and I thought maybe I'd finally come home. I hadn't touched down in the States in nearly a decade. Didn't even come back when Mom had her stroke 2 years ago. Flights out were rare, and they needed me. Or maybe that's just what I told myself. But I sent money, damn near all of it. Every month, no matter what was going on in the jungle, I wired home my pay. First it was to help with Dad's heart meds. Then it was to cover the property taxes when the diner went under. Then it was to keep my brother Darren's third restaurant afloat long enough for him to fail in a more dramatic way. I didn't complain. I figured that's what family did. The Uber driver looked bored when he dropped me off on Hawthorne Street. The house was different, same bones, but that siding, the fresh paint, new shutters, a manicured lawn that had never been part of our childhood, the porch swing was gone, replaced by some slick modern bench that probably came from a catalog. I stood at the gate for a moment, gripping the strap of my duffel bag tighter than I meant to. I thought of every wire transfer, every Western Union receipt stuffed into the zippered pocket of my old pilot's jacket. I had imagined this moment 100 times. Dad would be on the porch, a smile breaking through that stern face. Mom would come out with a dish towel still in her hand. Darren would shake my hand like a man finally realizing his kid brother had done good. Instead, I knocked. No one answered. A minute passed. Then I heard the door creak open. It was Mom. Her hair was shorter, thinner, dyed a soft, unnatural red that didn't suit her. She blinked at me like she was trying to remember where she knew me from. Elias, she said. No smile, just my name. Like I was a dentist calling about a past due bill. I stepped forward. Hey, Mom. She looked over her shoulder. Graham? Darren? It's Elias. A second later, my father appeared. Gray had swallowed his black hair entirely, but the old stiffness in his shoulders was still there. He gave me a nod, the kind you'd give a neighbor, or maybe a FedEx guy. Then Darren showed up, all perfect teeth and casual clothes that probably cost more than my last paycheck. Well, look who finally flew home, he said, his tone light, almost mocking. Didn't expect to see you this soon. Soon, I said. It's been 9 years. He chuckled like I'd made a joke and turned back into the house. I stood there dumbfounded. Mom stepped aside. Come in, I guess. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine cleaner. It was warm and tastefully decorated, too tastefully. I recognized the layout, but not the contents. The old furniture was gone, replaced with sleek leather and expensive wood. Art hung on the walls where our childhood photos used to be. Wow, I said quietly. This place looks incredible. Dad shrugged. We've done some upgrades. With my money, I thought, but I didn't say it. We sat in the living room. No one offered coffee. No one asked about my flight. Darren scrolled on his phone. Mom asked if I wanted to stay in the guest room. Not my room, the one with the peeling posters and cracked baseboards. No, that had been turned into an office. I'd be in the guest room, like a distant cousin in town for a funeral. I looked around. There was no sign of me. No framed photo. No dusty trophy. No high school yearbook. It was like I'd never lived here. Like I'd never existed. So, Darren said, setting his phone down just long enough to flash another smug grin. What's next for you? Gonna start a sightseeing business? You could fly folks over Lake Erie or something. I forced a smile. I was thinking I'd settle here for a bit. Maybe get reacquainted. Dad frowned. Well, it's a little tight these days. You know, with Darren's new business, we've had to make space for some of the equipment. Equipment? I asked. Crypto stuff, Darren said proudly. Got a whole advisory firm now. Blockchain consulting, virtual asset management, NFTs, though those are kind of passé now. I nodded slowly, pretending to care. But my jaw tightened. I recognized the car in the driveway. It was a brand new electric crossover, the kind that didn't come cheap. Darren hadn't had a real job in over a decade. He couldn't have afforded it on his own. I stood. I'm tired. Think I'll get some sleep. Mom led me to the guest room. It was cold, impersonal. The bed was too neat. The sheets still stiff from the store. No one had used it in a while. Before she left, Mom turned at the door. We didn't expect you so soon, Elias. I wish you'd called. I almost laughed. I did. Twice. She didn't respond. Just nodded and closed the door. I sat on the bed for a long time, listening to the muffled sounds of their laughter through the walls. My chest was tight. My eyes burned. But I didn't cry. I hadn't cried in years. I had given everything to this family, sacrificed the best years of my life flying through monsoons and dodging mountains with crates of medicine strapped to the wings. And now I was back, uninvited, uncelebrated, unseen. The house was full of everything I bought them, but there was no room for me. And for the first time, I realized something. I hadn't come home. I had walked into someone else's house, and I was a stranger here. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee, and for a second, it almost felt like childhood. I shuffled into the kitchen, expecting to find something familiar, maybe even comforting. But what I saw made my stomach twist. There were new bar stools at the kitchen island, marble countertops that gleamed under the recessed lighting, and a chrome espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a downtown cafe. My mom, in her pressed robe, poured a shot into a delicate cup without looking at me. My dad scrolled through his tablet at the table. Darren sat center stage, like always, elbows wide, laughing about something on his phone. He looked up and grinned. "Sleep all right in the museum wing?" I nodded, ignoring the jab. "Smelled like breakfast." "Oh, yeah. I made us all something," he said, motioning to the counter, where 3 plates were already served. 3. I glanced around. "Nothing for me." "Oh," Mom said absently, like she just noticed me standing there. "I thought you were still asleep." I grabbed a cup from the cabinet, poured what was left of the coffee, lukewarm and bitter, and sat down at the table. No one offered to pass anything. I wasn't sure they even noticed I was sitting. Darren tapped on his phone again. "Big news, actually. We just signed a new client. He's launching an NFT platform for personalized astrology readings." "That's something," I said. Dad looked up, his face lighting up like a proud coach. "Told you he had a good eye for these things." I let out a small breath through my nose. "What's the name of the company?" Darren shrugged. "Couple of LLCs, for flexibility. We're still finalizing branding." I stared at him. "LLCs?" "Yeah," he said, not meeting my eyes. My fork hung in the air. That sounded familiar. Too familiar. I watched as Darren leaned back in his chair, proudly describing crypto markets and decentralized this and that, using all the buzzwords he must have picked up off Reddit or YouTube. And I couldn't help but notice the watch on his wrist, a sleek, black Omega. That alone could have paid for a month's rent in half the towns I'd flown through. I took a sip of my coffee, bitter as it was. "Nice car out front," I said casually. Darren perked up. "Right? Got it last month. Fully electric. Tax credits make it a smart investment." I raised an eyebrow. "On the house or under your LLC?" He smirked. "Business lease. Smart write-off." My mom clapped her hands lightly, like he'd just won a spelling bee. "We're just so proud of how far he's come." Dad nodded. "He's really matured. Turned things around." I felt the words in my throat, sharp and hot. I had sent thousands, no, tens of thousands, home over the years. I'd lived out of a single suitcase, skipped hot meals, flown into storms, missed birthdays and funerals, just to keep this house standing. And now I was a ghost in it. I looked around. The framed photo of Darren cutting the ribbon at his failed bistro still hung on the wall. The hand-carved cabinet he had built with Dad during his one good summer stood proudly in the corner. But nowhere was there any sign I'd ever existed. No photos of me in my flight suit. No postcards I sent from Fiji or the Solomons. Not even the old trophy from when I won state cross-country in senior year. I glanced down at my plate, now empty but for crumbs, and realized I didn't even remember eating. Just going through motions. Just like always. They saw my money, not me. And I was beginning to wonder just how much of that money had been spent making Darren look like the son I used to be. That afternoon, when no one was looking, I slipped away upstairs. I told them I needed a nap, but my mind was running too fast for sleep. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof. Maybe something to tell me I hadn't imagined all those years of sacrifice. That this house, the foundation, the shingles, the new refrigerator humming like a luxury car, had my fingerprints on it somewhere. I started in the hallway closet. Just boxes of old linens and some Easter decorations. Then the laundry room, nothing but detergent and a giant pack of paper towels. Finally, I went into the attic. It still smelled the same, like drywood and dust and something faintly sour. The insulation had been redone, but they hadn't finished the whole thing. One side was tidy, stacked with plastic bins labeled Christmas and winter coats. The other side? Still chaos. The graveyard of old stuff no one wanted to deal with. That's where I went. Behind a stack of broken photo frames and a dusty lamp that hadn't worked since Clinton was president, I found it. An old green filing cabinet. One of the drawers was crooked, like it had been forced open too many times. I knelt down and gave it a tug. Inside were records, bank statements, printouts, letters from the county. Most of it was junk, but then I saw my name. On envelope after envelope. Statements from the wire transfers I'd sent through the years. It was all there. 9 years of payments. Each marked with a note in Mom's handwriting. February, house insurance. March, Graham meds. May, loan payoff. But then it got strange. I found a folder with Darren's name on it. Inside were LLC filings. Multiple. I flipped through them slowly, scanning the names. Praxis Consulting, Digigenic Solutions, Nimbus Advisory. All registered to our family address. Then came the bank records. Not mine. Theirs. Transfers that lined up suspiciously with the deposits I'd made. Each time I wired money to Mom's account, within days, large chunks were being rerouted to Darren's companies. I stared at the numbers. Thousands. Over and over. It hit like a punch to the gut. Next, a thick envelope at the bottom of the drawer, almost hidden beneath old coupons and junk mail. I opened it. It was the will, dated 2 years ago. Clean, notarized, and devastating. The house, fully deeded to Darren. Not split between brothers. Not shared. Just handed to him. Name and all. A handwritten note was clipped to the back. This will keep things simple. Darren's building something. Elias already has his own life. I sat back on my heels, heart pounding. My own life? What did they think I'd been building all these years? I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. Every page, every document. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them yet, but I wasn't about to walk back downstairs and pretend everything was okay. I stood there in the half-dark, dust settling on my sleeves, feeling like a fool in the attic of my own childhood. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd written me out, quietly, deliberately, and I wasn't sure if I was angrier at them or at myself for letting it happen. A few days later, we all went to the church picnic for Mom's birthday. Same spot as always, under the big oaks behind First Lutheran, with too many folding chairs and enough potato salad to drown in. I hadn't planned on going, but Mom insisted. It'll be good for you, she said. Let people see your back. She said it like I was a rumor. The yard was full of people I hadn't seen since high school. Neighbors, cousins, old church friends. They greeted me with vague smiles and soft pats on the back, like I'd just come home from prison, not 10 years of back-breaking work in the sky. Darren, on the other hand, held court at the center table. He wore a crisp button-down with the sleeves rolled just so, and he laughed loudly, too loudly, at all the right moments. He had his laptop open, showing off a slideshow about his latest project. Crypto for small-town investors, he said, like he'd invented air. I stood to the side, hands in my pockets, watching as Mom beamed at him, and Dad kept refilling his cup with lemonade like it was wine at a vineyard. Look at him. And Susan whispered to someone behind me. He's really turned things around. Makes you proud. I sipped my water and stared at the grass. Eventually, Darren stood and tapped the side of his cup. Can I get everyone's attention? The chatter died down. He lifted his glass like a politician. I just want to say how thankful I am for all of you. This family's been through a lot. But no matter what, we stick together. Especially for Mom, the heart of this family. Happy birthday, Ma. Applause. Whistles. Mom wiped her eyes. Then Darren looked at me. And of course, we're all glad Elias could join us, he said, his smile tight. Even though he's been off the grid, probably chasing volcanoes or whatever it is he does. A few chuckles. You know, not everyone has to be the hero. Some of us are building futures here, right at home. More laughter. I felt it then, that old heat in my chest, that slow, rising flame. I took a deep breath, set down my cup, and walked to the table. My voice was calm, too calm. Actually, I'd like to say something. Silence. All eyes turned to me. Darren smirked faltered. I pulled a small stack of papers from my jacket pocket, printouts of the bank statements, the will, the LLC filings. I've spent the last 10 years sending money back home, I said. Most of you probably didn't know that, but every paycheck I got overseas, I wired it here, paid off property taxes, covered medical bills, saved the house, saved this family. A rustle moved through the crowd. Turns out, I continued, those funds didn't just go to what I was told. They were routed to Darren's shell companies, to fund whatever this is. I gestured to his open laptop. Darren stepped forward, hand up. That's not. I raised the papers. I have bank records, the transfers, the dates. I also found the will. Mom and Dad quietly changed it, left the house to Darren, cut me out. My father stood slowly. Now hold on. No, I said, still calm. You hold on. I gave everything, and you didn't just forget me. You erased me. Darren scoffed. You're overreacting. You knew. I snapped. You've always known. You've been feeding off what I sent home while painting yourself as the visionary. And now you get the house, the one I kept out of foreclosure. A hush fell. No one laughed now. Dad's face hardened. I only have one son, he said flatly. And just like that, the last string snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I pulled out my phone, opened an email draft I had prepared, attached the scanned documents, and tapped send. To the whole family, I said, and to the local reporter at the Chronicle. They'll love the story of a decorated bush pilot being robbed blind by his own family. I looked around the table. Happy birthday, Mom. Then I turned and walked away as the silence behind me roared louder than any applause I'd ever earned. By the time I got back to the house that night, my phone had already started vibrating. First it was Mom. Elias, sweetheart, please call us. This isn't how families solve things. Then Dad, you had no right to do that in front of everyone. You've humiliated your mother. Then Darren, you smug little bastard. You think you can blow up my life because you're bitter? I didn't respond. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and stared at the blank wall. The silence in the house was different now, not awkward, hostile. I could feel it in the air, like something waiting to break. The next morning, I woke to over 40 unread messages. Darren had posted something on Facebook, a long, performative paragraph about betrayal from within, how some people mistake quiet support for weakness, and how he would not be dragged down by jealousy and slander. I almost laughed. The comments were split, half full of sympathy from clueless people, the other half asking about the screenshots I had sent. The post was taken down by noon. Then the phone rang again. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up. Is this Elias Mercer? A woman asked. Yes, this is Sherry Thomas with the Millbrook Chronicle. We received your email, and I'd love to talk. These documents raise serious questions. Inheritance fraud, financial misconduct, possible misrepresentation of LLC tax filings. Would you be open to speaking on the record? I took a breath. Yeah, I'm ready. The article ran the following Thursday. Front page of the local section. Veteran pilot alleges family exploitation, fraud and house dispute. They included excerpts from the documents, portions of the will, and one particularly damning quote from me. They didn't just take my money. They used it to erase me. After that, the real unraveling began. Family friends stopped answering my parents' calls. The town council rescinded Darren's invitation to speak at a business leadership luncheon. His name was quietly removed from a Chamber of Commerce flyer. But the most surprising call came from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Elias? It's Teresa. I blinked. Teresa? Wow. I didn't even know you still lived in Ohio. I moved back last year. Just saw the article. Oh, there was a pause. Then her voice softened. You were right to say it all. I went through something like this too. After Grandma died, Darren convinced everyone I was unstable and talked Mom and Dad into cutting me out of the estate. Said I couldn't handle money. It was a lie, and no one believed me. I sat down, stunned. Thank you, she said, for blowing it open. You made them look at him with clear eyes. We met for coffee that week, talked for hours. She'd been quietly documenting her side too. Old texts, suspicious transfers, whispered family rumors. She was the first person in years who actually looked me in the eye and said, "You didn't deserve this." After that, I stopped hiding. Darren kept trying to spin it, made a new LinkedIn with inflated titles, started a podcast no one listened to, but the damage was done. And I stayed quiet, letting the truth do the work for me. My parents still tried, though. One text said, "You've broken our family." Another, "We should have never let you back in." I read those, then deleted them, because I finally understood. I wasn't the one who broke anything. I just stopped holding it together for them. A week after the article ran, I stepped into a law office downtown, the kind with frosted glass doors and quiet, carpeted hallways. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile and offered coffee I didn't take. I was early. I always am. At 9:01, Mrs. Delaney walked out to meet me. Mid-50s, sharp blazer, glasses that hung low on her nose, and the kind of presence that made people sit straighter. She specialized in estate law and fraud cases. I had found her through Teresa. "Elias Mercer," she said, extending her hand. "Let's talk about justice." Over the next hour, I laid everything out: bank records, will changes, LLC connections, my years of financial support. She didn't interrupt much, just asked a few precise questions and nodded a lot. At the end of it, she tapped her pen twice against her legal pad and said, "We have a case." I exhaled. "But I won't lie to you," she added. "It'll be long and ugly, and it will cost you more than money." I nodded. "I've already paid more than they ever will." She smiled, not unkindly. "Good, that helps." We filed within 2 weeks. A formal claim contesting the will, along with a demand for restitution of funds diverted through Darren's companies. Mrs. Delaney was thorough. She attached financial exhibits, emails, my travel logs, even photos of old birthday cards I'd sent with cash stuffed inside. My parents responded by hiring their own lawyer, a local guy with a flair for drama and a complete lack of subtlety. His first filing described me as a resentful son seeking vengeance over old family disagreements. They denied any wrongdoing, called the house a gift earned through proximity and contribution, claimed I had chosen absence and therefore waived entitlement. Mrs. Delaney called it nonsense. Let them dig that hole. We'll just document every shovelful. And so the games began. Darren started posting vague updates online again, quotes about betrayal, about snakes in the grass. He even shared a meme that read, "Real men build empires. Fake ones try to burn them down." I ignored it. Instead, I stayed steady. Every communication with my family went through Mrs. Delaney. I didn't respond to texts. I didn't answer the phone. I kept copies of everything. Dates, names, receipts. I became meticulous, cold, even. And for once, it felt good. The house grew quieter. My parents started retreating from their community. Church friends whispered. Their favorite waitress at the diner stopped calling them by name. Darren's consulting gigs dried up. Word got around. Meanwhile, I started walking. Every morning, I visited the local library, the old rec center, the park where I used to run laps in high school. A few old faces remembered me, mostly with surprised smiles. "Didn't think we'd see you around here again, Elias." I reconnected with a few classmates, had lunch with my old chemistry teacher, even bumped into Teresa again at the farmer's market. People looked at me differently now, like I'd come back with a story worth listening to. And in a strange way, I started rebuilding slowly, but on my own terms. At night, I sat in the same guest room where this all started, now cluttered with legal folders and sticky notes. I didn't feel like a guest anymore. I felt like the one drawing the map, and for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing acceptance. I was preparing to take back my name. The lawsuit never made it to trial. It took almost a year, 11 months of filings, back and forth letters, depositions, and long stretches of silence broken by sharp bursts of fury. Darren's lawyer tried every trick in the book: delay tactics, character attacks, half-truths dressed as arguments. But the documents didn't lie, and neither did the numbers. Eventually, they folded. Mrs. Delaney called me one Tuesday morning. "They're ready to settle," she said. "They'll offer partial restitution and withdraw Darren's exclusive claim to the house." I didn't feel joy, just a strange kind of stillness. We signed the agreement a few weeks later in a sterile conference room downtown. Darren showed up in a suit a size too tight, jaw clenched, eyes darting everywhere but at me. My parents didn't come, probably for the best. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. The house was legally returned to a joint inheritance. I was offered a payout for my share, modest, but fair. The court acknowledged the financial misconduct. No criminal charges, but the stain was public. The article in the Chronicle had already done its work. People in Millbrook whispered now when they saw the Mercers, and not with admiration. Darren's business collapsed 2 months later. The LLCs were quietly dissolved. His podcast ended after 7 episodes. He tried pivoting into resilience coaching, but it didn't catch. The family name, once plastered across bake sale banners and community boards, was now shorthand for scandal. But the house? I didn't take it. The lawyer was surprised. You could keep it, sell it, live in it. It's yours as much as his. I shook my head. I don't want it. Instead, I donated my half to a local housing foundation. They turned it into a transitional home for women coming out of domestic situations. Mrs. Delaney called it poetic. I called it closure. When the news hit, my mother left a voicemail I never listened to. Darren sent a single email with no subject. Just, this was low. Even for you. I deleted it. What none of them knew was that I had already packed up and moved out weeks before the papers were signed. I started therapy around the same time. Teresa recommended someone, Dr. Malik. Gentle, smart, quiet in a way that made you feel safe. I told her everything. The jungle, the money, the attic, the picnic, the email. She didn't try to fix it. She helped me understand why I let it happen for so long. Why I kept trying to earn a love that was never meant to be conditional. Why I kept throwing lifelines to people who only saw me as a wallet with wings. It wasn't love, she said one day. It was loyalty. And sometimes, those aren't the same thing. I wrote that down. I also wrote letters I never sent. To my mother, to my father, even to Darren. I didn't need them to read the words. I just needed to know they were out of me. One afternoon, before leaving town for good, I walked through the old neighborhood, past the cracked basketball court, the overgrown lot where we used to catch fireflies, the church where my mom once sang alto in the choir. I stood outside the house one last time, now stripped of its fancy bench and curated landscaping. It looked smaller, sadder, but it didn't belong to me anymore. Not in any way that mattered. I turned, walked to my truck, and drove off without a second glance. I didn't leave victorious. Not exactly, but I left whole, and that was enough. I moved to the coast in late spring, somewhere quiet, not flashy. A little town in Oregon with fog that hugged the cliffs and people who nodded at you without needing your name. I found a cottage 5 miles inland, small porch, rusted mailbox, blackberry vines growing wild along the fence. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I started an aerial photography business. Just me and a drone I bought secondhand. I still flew small planes occasionally, charter gigs, sightseeing tours, but this was different. This was creating something, not just transporting. I'd wake early, chase the morning light across the water, and spend afternoons editing from my kitchen table. It was simple work, honest work, and no one here cared about my last name. I made friends slowly, real ones. Kevin, who ran the bookstore and always had a mug of black tea waiting. Marla, who fixed surfboards and offered life advice whether you wanted it or not. We didn't talk about money, or family, or resumes. Just life, weather, what book you were reading. Mrs. Delaney checked in once a month, even after the case closed. She called them status meetings, but mostly we talked about gardening or her son's college essays. She said I had guts. I told her she gave me mine back. Teresa visited once in July. We sat on the beach and skipped stones and talked about how strange it felt to live outside of the family script. She was thinking about writing a memoir. I told her to do it. She said I should too. I laughed, but I didn't say no. Every so often, I'd get a cold, brittle email from Darren. No greeting, no apology, just noise. One-liners like, hope the coast is as lonely as you wanted, or still playing the victim? I never replied. I never even read most of them past the first line. My parents didn't reach out, not once. Sometimes, I thought about them. About the porch swing Dad tore down. About Mom's meatloaf. About the sound of Darren's laughter when we were kids and everything still felt like a fair fight. But I didn't miss them, not in the way I expected. What I missed, I realized, was the idea of them. The family I thought I had. I took long walks in the evenings, camera slung around my shoulder, chasing sunsets that never turned out the same twice. It felt like building something new, frame by frame. No shame, no performance, just light and stillness and space to breathe. One night, I sat at my desk with the window cracked and a breeze rolling in off the water. I pulled out a sheet of paper, real paper, and wrote a letter, not to anyone, just to myself. It said, I exist. I am enough. I am not a sum of what I gave to people who refused to see me. I am not their version of me. I folded it gently, slid it into the back of my drawer, and then I went to bed, slept deeply, and woke with no ghosts in my chest, just morning light and the sound of waves.